Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this show without the express written consent of the Financial Guys, LLC is strictly prohibited.
Investment advisory services offered through Independent Solutions Wealth Management and Blackridge Asset Management, LLC. Broker Services, LLC is not an affiliate of Independent Solutions or Financial Guys, LLC.
Welcome to TFG Truth. I'm Mike Hayflick along with my co-host Mike Sparazza. Each and every week, folks, we like to report facts, expose hypocrisy, and espouse common sense. One of the best things we get to do, though, is bring on specialists, people who know what they're talking about on some of the very most important topics of the day. Border security is the topic of the day, folks, and we have Sheriff Mark Dannels of Cochise County, Arizona, joining us again. Sheriff Mark Dannels, thanks again for joining us. It's such a treat to have you here. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me share the message, what's going on the border, especially on the East Coast back there.
Yeah, nobody better than you to do that, Sheriff. We talked to you several times this year already, and last time you weren't too overly optimistic about the work being done by the federal government to secure our border. Can you tell us of any changes that have happened, whether they're positive changes or even negative changes?
Sadly, I can't tell you the positive changes because there has not been any. We've been in a status quo since last time I've been on your show, and pretty much since this president has taken office in January. His message on day one that the border was not an emergency to current time it's got worse every month. The stats are, I call them politically neutral stats. And to give you an example of where we are, I just got these stats here about a week and a half ago. From last year, we've had 1.473 million encounters on the southwest border. That is a 325% increase over last year, just to put it in perspective.
And how many new employees do you have down there, Sheriff, to handle those?
Well, we don't, and that's the thing. And neither is Border Patrol, as we already know too. So you look at that, and here's some alarming stuff I want to share with you guys. These, like I said, these just came out. These came out through our partners with Border Patrol that shared these with us through CBP. They're the author of these stats. 63% of them are other than a Mexican. We all think about these folks are all coming from Mexico, that region of the world. 63% are other than Mexican. The other thing about this is, and I think it's alarming, and it should be alarming what's going on in the world right now, 164 countries have breached our southwest border. 164 countries. So this is not isolated. I mean, we're seeing from countries from all over the world breaching our southwest border. Now, in my region, to narrow it down just to my region of the border in the southeast corner of the state, we've had 115,000 getaways. These are people that have been seen on Border Patrol cameras and have got away in the country. We average about 10,000 a month right now. That are people that are smuggled by the cartels. These are people that you don't see in Texas because they can't give up. There's something in their background, or they're on some kind of list that gets them automatically arrested or automatically deported. So these 115,000 are in our country somewhere right now, just out of the Tucson sector, which is my section of the state here in Arizona. That's alarming. That should be alarming to every American when it comes to public safety, national security, and humanitarian. And when I say humanitarian, just in Arizona, the 4 border counties that border Mexico and Arizona, we've had 162 deaths from migrants. 162. And somebody said it's not humanitarian. You put that in perspective. Those are real numbers, because everyone's been investigated by a sheriff's office and is deemed homicide until proven otherwise through the investigation. So look at the man hours and time that we put into 162 investigations there alone. So nothing good. In the last 12 days, and this came out a week ago, so about the last 3 weeks, we've had 12 shootings in the desert. These are migrant rip crews that are ripping the smugglers of the drugs or the money. 3 shootings. So it just shows you the violence, the crime at the local level as a result of trespass, pursuits, damage, you name it, is up. And every one of these border counties, to include my own. And so I keep saying this, and I'll continue to say it until we see different. there has been no action plan to make this a safer border, which makes our country safer. So as long as these stats continue, and they're politically neutral, they're not political stats for Democrats, political stats for Republicans. They're politically neutral. This is what's going on our southwest border, and it's not good.
I was just going to say that too. I think but people have just over politicized this issue to the maximum, right? And it's not a political issue. Our borders and our security and like you've said, our safety is really what comes first. That should be the most important thing, no matter if you're on the left, the right, the middle, it doesn't really matter. And not for nothing, every time we talk to you, it gets worse and worse. And I'm not saying that, in a bad way for you, but it's sad. Every time we talk to you, I mean, those numbers are horrifying. I would have never known that unless we're talking to you right now. And you mentioned people that are coming through that border. Drug dealers and cartels are smart folks. Terrorists are smart folks. If you're a terrorist in the Middle East right now, what are you thinking? I'll just get down there and I'll walk right up and we can have another 9/11 situation at will, because it's not that hard to get across that border. I think that's what a lot of Americans fail to realize too. These people, they think, they're drug dealers. They're not that. No, these are brilliant people. They thrive on opportunity, right? They're very smart people, and it's scary to think that they're just walking over the border and getting away like it's an easy task for them.
It is easier to smuggle a terrorist in our country than it is to get a meal in Las Vegas right now, or into Los Angeles with the lines. It is terrible. It's truly terrible what's going on in this country. And I say this, and I'll continue to say this too. Every elected official, local, state, or federal, takes an oath of office to protect their communities and their country. It's amazing we're allowing this in this country at this level. On my cameras alone, and this is from January 1 to the end of August, we've had 24,138 just off the sheriff's office cameras. We've had 47 drug smugglers. Why that's important? A little over a year and a half ago, I was at 0 for drug smuggling. And it shows you the messaging or the lack of messaging to have consequences on our border by our president. We have the issues we're having. It'll never change, Mike, until we get this president to stand up and say we want a secure border in this country.
Yeah. I mean, if you read off all these numbers, they're staggering, and it would make some people think, well, Sheriff, you and your folks have to do a better job. But you would literally probably need 4 or 5-fold the number of people to enforce the border right now, because literally the red carpet has been rolled out for these people. They've essentially been told, don't worry, anything that happens at the border that we used to do, it doesn't happen anymore. You can go to any American city that you wish. Whether you have COVID, whether you don't have COVID, who knows? They probably don't get tested. They certainly don't seem to have a vaccine requirement on them once they cross the border. So, it's dumbfounding that here you are doing the very best you can, and these numbers are staggering numbers, and they aren't going down. So now Texas has been in the spotlight. So a little bit of the Arizona issues maybe have taken a back seat to some degree, because we're seeing illegals living under bridges. We're seeing Haitians, like you said, 63% of those crossing the border are non-Mexicans. Well, we know a lot of them are Haitians. They're getting basically let in and transported to American cities. So what is your take on what's going on in Texas and the Governor Abbott's handling of things there?
Well, I want to applaud Governor Abbott. I mean, remember, these border security is a federal mandate. It's not a local or state mandate. But now you have dozen Republican governors that are stepping up, doing the right thing. Again, I hate to put Republican on that. It's like I'm talking politics. But these governors took their oath serious to protect their states. So I commend and applaud Governor Abbott. I applaud my governor, Governor Ducey. We have worked very close with them. But again, when they've been neglected too. Our governors have been neglected throughout the country. This has become an interior problem. Talking to my fellow sheriffs, where now the violence in their urban areas where they're going, the drugs, the crime, you name it, is up because of this. And when you're not deportation by ICE is down 66% from last year, which means they're not deporting these violent criminals that need to be deported. Yeah. And I've talked to the same thing here in Arizona. Again, there is nothing good coming out of what's going on this border. And as long as that continues, we're changing the dynamics of this country, and it's not for the good.
And Sheriff, the other day, and I'm going to tie this back in a second, but we have Fauci canceling Christmas again, right? You shouldn't see your family for Christmas, right? You got, the narrative out there is the unvaxxed are the enemy, right? We're the enemy, the unvaxxed folks. You know what? Hold on one second. She's going to have to cut that. Got to go back. I heard us on there.
I'm back. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. No, she'll be able to cut that. So we're not live.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start where I was just going there. So, I'm going to tie this back in a second, but we have Fauci canceling Christmas the other day. You shouldn't see your family and friends again for the holidays because COVID's running rampant. You have the narrative that the unvaxxed are the enemy. We're the true enemy now. It's the unvaxxed folks. But yet they're not talking about illegals just walking across the border, potentially with COVID, not being tested, no vaccine requirements. I had to give up my Bills season tickets because I can't go to games because I'm unvaccinated now. But anywhere else, if you're an illegal, no, there's no rules here. It's just, I don't understand the hypocrisy of it. If you're going to be tough on it, be tough on it. If you're not, then don't. But I guess I'm looking to you. Are you seeing COVID coming up to those borders like crazy, or any health issues coming up to that border?
I was speaking to one of my deputies here about a week and a half ago, and they had 6 smuggling vehicles during his shift that he was involved with. During that time, they had one group in the car. They're getting them out of the car, and one was coughing pretty hard. And my deputy asked him, I said, "You guys sick?" And the one or two of them said, "Yeah, we have COVID." Now we're exposed right there. We are exposed right there. We're seeing, yesterday I was out on the border with my border team, quarter mile from the border, between the highway where the pickup is and the international border. We had 8 smuggling groups around us. I mean, we're in the heart of it. And these are covert smugglers, all camouflaged up. They're not the groups you see in Texas. These people are doing everything they can to get away from me. So we end up getting one of the groups. But again, these people don't have the prevention care that we do in the United States. They're out there. They're coming through the deserts. It's a real issue. And I tell you, one of the thoughts down here on the border is the fact that when Dr. Fauci speaks on COVID, he doesn't speak for the border communities. If he would, he'd be addressing this. Mm-hmm. They addressed public transportation when you get the shots coming in the country over the last year and a half. But what they didn't address is the border surge, which continues today, which is still being neglected by Dr. Fauci and his team. It's very insulting for us down here on the border.
Well, there's there's such a complete ignorance, and I have to say, there hasn't been a worse visual of a misrepresentation of what's going on than with those agents on horseback with the whips to get the horses to do what they need them to do to navigate, in water and up trails and so forth. But what does that do, Sheriff, when your law enforcement officials, the folks that are risking their lives every day and night for you, what does that do to their morale when they hear the reaction to obviously not whipping Haitians, and treating them like slaves, like we were told in the national media just, heard and ran with.
And again, if you did any research at all, if you watched any video at all, you would know that wasn't the case, right? And the fact that they haven't even had to go back on those comments, they still are out there. Kamala Harris is still making comments that we need to investigate. I mean, It's insanity.
Yeah. I mean, so morale and their ability to do their jobs. I mean, can you comment on that?
I can, and the Arizona Sheriff Association, I'm the president of the Arizona Sheriffs here in Arizona. We're in the process of authoring a letter in support of our CBP partners, Border Patrol partners out there, to include the incident with the horses. We're fortunate that video exists. We're truly fortunate because it actually disclaims what really happened. Mm-hmm. You look at what's going on, all the humanitarian issues. You look at the public safety, the national security threats to this country right now, and we're worried about an incident that's not even true. That's very sad. The morale is very poor with CBP. I promise you that. I was speaking to them yesterday. I speak to my fellow agents all the time. This is tough for them right now. Very tough. And to have what I call their leaders coming out against them.
Right.
It's a crying shame. It's bad enough what law enforcement's gone over the last year and a half, and then they have them doing the darnest, the best they can do with stretched resources, manpower, and then to be criticized for something that's not even true. Even the photographer came out and said, that's not the picture that you're seeing. But it's irrelevant. They made a statement, they walked away from it, cowardly statement, and walked away from it. Shame on them.
Yeah, no doubt. I know that we had asked you months ago if you had heard back from the president or the White House. You had basically said, he needs to get me and others like me back to the table to give him the advice he needs to get this under control. Have you heard from anyone? We know that Kamala Harris hasn't taken on the border czar, role that we thought she was supposed to. She's avoiding it like the plague, even though she can jet set across the country back and forth to Los Angeles. But have you heard anything at all from the White House? Has any sheriff's associations, have they been consulted on any of this?
You saw there's a plan out right now that's to deal with immigration on the border. We were never consulted on that. I can promise you that. Second of all, the border sheriffs were not consulted on that. No, we sent a letter May 27th to the President of the United States on behalf of national sheriffs. That was completely ignored. So this has been willful neglect by this administration, by the president, vice president, when it comes to the ability to be collective in public safety on this border, the ability to work together for our communities, share our oath of offices that government should be doing. That's an expectation. But no, that has not happened, Mike. And at this point, we don't see it happen in the future. I mean, it's the sound of silence out of the White House has been the music song playing there. So.
Sheriff, a few last questions before we let you go. One is going to be, is this completely purposeful by this administration? And I don't mean to get political with it, but it is the left, right? That's pushing a lot of stuff. Is it purposeful? Is it ignorance? Is it just they don't care? I mean, what is it? Do we have any clue what that is? Why they are just neglecting to really focus on this major issue?
Let me just claim this. I'm not a conspiracy thinker, and after 37 years being law enforcement, opinions, we can all receive them, but the facts is what drives my business. I will say this. When this all first started, I was optimistic. Now, 9-10 months later, with everything happened, with the efforts been attempted by sheriffs throughout the country, national, western, and southwest border, my personal efforts to engage and make a difference here, I will tell you this much. This is well orchestrated. There's no doubt in my mind. I'll say it with confidence. There's no way you cannot believe, just based on the stats alone, that there's a problem in the southwest border, when they won't even say it's a crisis. Think about that. They won't even admit this is a crisis. That shows you how neglectful and willful they are when it comes to what they're doing here. They are changing our country. This is an open border policy, the worst I've seen in my 37 years. It's alarming to me what's going on in the world with Afghanistan. We're in a perfect storm, right? And you need a logical, non-political person can see that. And anybody who doesn't want to see it, they're playing politics.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like for a while, we all could agree on certain things. Mike and I will always say, wait, wasn't it common sense at some point that we would keep people that aren't supposed to be in our country out of our country? And then I see it with COVID, too. I mean, we see it with the border crisis. We see it with COVID. The handling of these situations, either not handling it or creating some very simple answer to very complex problems. What I'm a little bit annoyed with is we've often made this a left and right type of issue. And to me, it's become a right and wrong issue. Anyone, whether you're Democrats or Republicans, should be saying, I want to be on the right side of this issue. I'm with Sheriff Mark Dannels. He knows what the hell he's doing down there. I'm going to put the reins in his hands, so to speak, and you guide us out of this mess, Sheriff. But even the left and right can't agree that this should be done, because I don't hear a lot from the Republicans either. I mean, I just don't see answers to get you more support. And I don't know, I think it's right and wrong. I mean, that's what it used to be.
Well, and Mike, I don't disagree with you on that either. It's so sad what's going on right now on this border. What worries me is, how do we get out of it? Where do we go from here that we're not going to be damaged, that's going to carry us long into the future? I'm really concerned about that. As somebody that served in the military, now served last 37 years in public safety, 40 years of public service, and this is the worst I've ever seen it. And I've seen the ebb and flow on this border. I am very, very disheartened with what's going on, that anybody in any elected office could allow this to happen, all because of politics or tainted ideologies. So I'm concerned.
Well, and last thing too, Sheriff, I laugh because we're on the northern border, right? So my home where I live is a 7-minute drive to the Canadian border. You can't get over there if you're unvaccinated. I can't go into Canada right now. I'm not allowed to go in, right? So we have this great difference between the northern border and the southern border, which makes it even more, not to make light of it, but even more comical, right? Like it's the same country, but we have two completely different strategies at each border, right? So it makes no sense. But the last thing I would say is, just before we end, is what is your solution? How do you fix it from someone that knows the territory and knows what's best?
There's no better time for your communities to stand up. And then, unfortunately, I like to say collectively, we wish we could all do that. We got to get politics out of it. The president's got to change the message. He's got to prioritize the border. We've got to have consequences. But in the meantime, as long as that's not happening, communities got to step up, take charge of their communities, safeguard their communities, and that's mayors, that's school board, fire boards, sheriffs. We all need to stand united on this. We want our governors participating on that. If the federal government's not going to do their job, we have to do it. We'll continue to do that until we get some resolutions. And the people need to unite and speak on this. There's no better time for people to stand up and say this is wrong than now.
Well said. Thanks, Sheriff Mark Dannels, Cochise County, Arizona. Keep up the good fight. We are with you. I know we're thousands of miles from you, but we are with you every step of the way. We can't thank you enough for sharing, again, with us and with our audience, facts and evidence. And folks, you heard it from someone who knows literally firsthand, right there at the border. Again, Sheriff Mark Dannels, thanks again.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate all you do, too. Have a good day.
Thanks, Ken. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. That'll do it, folks. Thanks again for tuning into TFG Truth. Boy, it's just still a mess, and it's still the same administration, so maybe not a surprise. Yeah,
it as he is stated every time he comes on with us, it's been a few months, and it's gotten worse as we know it again, right? So at some point, and this is something that, like I said last week on our show before we wrap up, I said on the radio show when I talked to Mike and Glenn last weekend, this is why I love doing these interviews, because it's not just Mike Kaflick and Mike Sparazza talking about what we feel, right? It's not Mike or Glenn just giving thoughts on what they feel. It's truly the expert or the people that are in the area or in the field telling us, and that he brought the stats. I'm so glad he did that, because we got to cut those up and get those out there. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I mean, 115,000 getaways. 10,000 a month, people crossing that they couldn't get. They're in our country.
Right.
With COVID, without COVID, rapists.
We didn't even get into the whole thing that they're supposed to show up for a court date or a Zoom meeting, right? Like they're going to show up, right? It's like the kid that you threaten with, you're going to go to detention if you don't show up to class. They don't show up to class. Oh, okay, I was just kidding, right? I'm not going to give you detention. We're just going to let it go, right? Like there's no punishment. Of course, they're not going to follow the rules, right?
People like to get attention, and what better place to come than the United States of America? And we see it every day. I mean, there's new caravans are starting every day, right? Well, anyway, so again, officially, this will do it, folks. Thanks again for tuning into TFG Truth. I'm Mike Kaflick with Mike Sparazza. We'll talk to you next week.